Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating science of how children really learn. We're going to peel back the layers on some of those long-held beliefs about education and really uncover what the research tells us about raising successful, brilliant kids.
So, let's just jump right in with a big, maybe even a little uncomfortable question. Are we teaching our children all wrong? For decades, our approach has been based on certain assumptions. But what if the actual science of learning points us in a totally different direction? All right, let's get into it.
You see, the core idea we're exploring today is this huge shift in thinking. For so long, the main model was the sage on the stage. The idea that a teacher's job is to just pour knowledge into a child's mind, like filling an empty vessel. But the science? It now points to a new model, the guide on the side. In this version, the adult is more like a coach, helping a child who is already an active explorer, an active discoverer.
Okay, so let's really unpack that. The old way versus the new. This is a fundamental change in how we see the whole learning process. Let me tell you a quick story about a 2-year-old named Sasha. For her birthday, she gets a stuffed animal, and she hears the word elephant for the very first time. Now, get this. The next day at the zoo, she points to the real-life animal and says, elephants. See, she didn't just memorize a definition. She actively pieced it all together, connecting a word to a toy and then to a giant living creature. It's a perfect little example of how kids aren't just passive sponges. They are constantly actively building their own map of the world. So, if kids are these active learners, what are the best conditions for them to really thrive? Well, it turns out science suggests there's a kind of recipe for fantastic learning, and it's built on 6 key ingredients. And here they are, the 6 pillars of learning. For any experience to be really, truly effective, it should be active, engaged, meaningful, socially interactive, iterative, and that just means there's room to try and fail and try again. And finally, it has to be joyful, because, positive emotions literally fuel our brains for learning. This is such a powerful framework, so let's break down a few of these with some amazing examples. First up, learning has to be active. It's simple. Kids learn way better when they figure things out for themselves. So in one study, researchers tried to teach preschoolers a new word, glark. One group was just told, this is a glark, but the other group was asked to find the glark. And guess what? The kids who had to actively figure it out learned the word much, much better. It shows that being mentally minds-on is really what makes learning stick.
Okay, next up, learning must be engaged. And this one might actually surprise you because it challenges something we see all the time. We tend to think a classroom bursting with colorful posters and decorations is stimulating, right? Well, a 2014 study found the exact opposite. Kindergartners in these super decorated rooms were actually more distracted. They spent more time off task, and they learned less than the kids in the plain, undecorated rooms. Wow. So engagement really requires focus, not just more stuff to look at.
Third is meaningful learning. This is all about connecting new ideas to what we already know. Think about it like this. Fractions. It is so much easier for a kid to get the idea of 1/4 if you first show them a real familiar thing, like a slice of pizza, before you ever show them that abstract symbol, 1/4. You have to make it meaningful to make it stick.
This 4th pillar it's huge. Learning has to be socially interactive. We are social animals through and through. There's this landmark study where they exposed American babies to Mandarin. One group got to interact with a real live speaker. The other groups just watched a video or listened to an audio recording of the same person. The results? They were stunning. Only the babies who had that live, social interaction with a real person actually learned to tell the Mandarin sounds apart. The screens, they just couldn't do it. A real human connection was essential.
Okay, so now that we've got a handle on how children learn best, what is it they actually need to learn to succeed in the 21st century? It's about so much more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's really about building a modern toolkit of essential skills.
Researchers have boiled it down to these 6 core competencies for our modern world. They call them the 6 C's: collaboration, communication, content, critical thinking, creativity, and confidence. What's so fascinating to me is that content,
the facts and figures that school usually focuses on, is just one piece of this much, much bigger puzzle. So let's zoom in on a couple of these.
Let's start with communication. I want you to look at this number, 9. What do you think that is? Well, some studies suggest it's the number of new words a toddler can learn every single day. Just think about that pace for a second. It's an explosion of language, and it's the absolute bedrock for reading, for social skills, for everything that comes next. Next up, collaboration. This is one of those things we sometimes brush off as a soft skill. But check out this finding. A child's social skills in kindergarten, things like being able to cooperate and help others, are just as predictive of their academic success in 5th grade as their early reading skills are. Let that sink in. Teamwork and empathy aren't just fluffy nice-to-haves. They are absolutely critical for learning.
And finally, let's talk about confidence. Now, this isn't about being arrogant. It's about resilience. And the way we praise kids is so incredibly powerful in shaping that. When we praise their innate ability, like saying, "You're so smart at math," we accidentally foster a fixed mindset. And kids start to fear challenges that might make them look not so smart. But when we praise their effort, "Wow, you worked so hard at that," we build a growth mindset, and we teach them that intelligence is something that can actually grow and develop.
Okay, so we have the how, those 6 pillars of learning, and we have the what, the 6 C's. How in the world do we put it all together? Well, the answer is actually surprisingly simple, and it's something kids are literally wired to do. Let's talk about the magic ingredient, guided play.
Guided play is just the perfect sweet spot. It's not a total free-for-all, but it's not rigid, boring instruction either. It's when an adult gently nudges a child's natural play towards a specific learning goal. So imagine you're building with blocks, and a parent starts asking questions about shapes or counting how many blocks are in the tower. You're combining the pure joy and freedom of play with the focus of learning.
And this is where it all clicks into place. Just take a simple, everyday activity like reading a book together. As you can see here, you're not just doing one thing. You're building communication skills with all that new vocabulary. You're passing on content from the story itself. And you're sparking critical thinking every time you ask a question like, "What do you think will happen next?" One playful activity can build a whole suite of these essential 21st century skills all at once.
The big takeaway here is that every single one of us, parents, caregivers, teachers, we all have the power to create these moments of deep, lasting learning. You don't have to be the sage on the stage. You just have to be the guide on the side.
And I really want to leave you with this powerful quote from the researchers. They wrote, "Those social relationships formerly known as soft skills are anything but soft. They are the very heart of what it means to learn. Our connections with children, that's the foundation. Everything else is built on top of that."
So I'll end with this final thought. In a world that's just jam-packed with educational apps and fancy, light-up toys, we've seen that real, true learning is active, it's social, and it's joyful. So what if the greatest educational toy you could ever give a child isn't a toy at all? What if it's the rich, playful, back-and-forth interactions we have with them every day? Thanks for watching The Explainer.